A throne is not something you simply walk away from. It is a birthright, a divine appointment, a covenant sealed with centuries of blood, tradition, and sacrifice. To abandon it is unthinkable, an act of betrayal against history itself. But what if the story we all know is a lie? What if the greatest royal romance of the 20th century wasn't a romance at all, but a cover for a meticulously planned escape? This is the story of a king who didn't just fall from grace. He built himself a parachute long before he jumped. In the early 1930s, the world was smitten with him. He was Edward, Prince of Wales. Handsome, charismatic, modern. He was a breath of fresh air in the stuffy halls of Buckingham Palace. He toured the empire. He danced the Charleston. He connected with the common man in a way no royal ever had. He was the future, the firm hope of a monarchy entering a new, uncertain age. But the establishment, and especially his own father, King George V, saw something else. They saw a man who chafed at duty, who recoiled from responsibility. The old king once confided in his prime minister, Stanley Baldwin, with a chillingly accurate prophecy. "After I am dead," he said, "the boy will ruin himself in 12 months. And then there was her, Wallis Simpson, an American, twice divorced. In the rigid, unforgiving society of 1930s Britain, she was the trifecta of unsuitability. To the royal court, she was not just an inappropriate companion for the heir. She was an existential threat. She was intelligent, sharp-tongued, and utterly unimpressed by the pomp and circumstance that defined Edward's world. And he was utterly captivated by her. On January 20th, 1936, the old king died. Prince Edward, now King Edward VIII, stood at the window of St. James' Palace as the official proclamation was read. The crowd cheered for their new monarch. But inside, the clock on his reign was already ticking. The constitutional crisis had begun. The rules were absolute. As king, he was also the head of the Church of England, a church that did not recognize divorce. He could not, under any circumstances, marry a divorced woman and expect her to become queen. The government, the church, and the dominions of the British Empire were united in their opposition. The world saw a man tormented by an impossible choice, his crown or his love. The newspapers, under a gentleman's agreement, kept the scandal from the British public for months while it was front-page news in America and Europe. It painted the picture of a romantic hero, a king willing to sacrifice everything for the woman he adored. But behind this carefully managed public drama, a different story was unfolding. A story of cold calculation. As early as the summer of 1936, a full 6 months before he would give his famous abdication speech, King Edward VIII began to hold secret meetings. Not with his government to find a compromise, not with the church to plead his case. He met with his personal lawyer, a man named George Allen. The subject of these covert discussions was not how to keep the throne. It was how to give it up and on what terms. This was a man agonizing over a decision. This was a man negotiating an exit package. While Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin believed he was counseling a conflicted monarch, the king was, in effect, playing a double game. He was exploring the legal mechanics of abdication, a process that had no modern precedent in Britain. He was concerned with the details. What would his title be? What would his financial settlement be? Where would he live? He was planning his escape, using the love affair as both his reason and his leverage. He knew the establishment could never accept Wallis. He used this unbreachable wall to his advantage. By presenting them with an impossible choice, accepting Wallis as queen or forcing his abdication, he cornered them. He made it seem like their decision, when in reality, he had already charted his own course. The pressure mounted. In November, Baldwin finally confronted the king with 3 stark options. 1. Give up Wallis Simpson. 2. Keep Wallis and the government would resign, plunging the nation into an unprecedented political crisis. Or 3. Abdicate. For the public and for most of history, this was the moment of truth, the heart-wrenching ultimatum. But for Edward, it was merely the endgame of a strategy set in motion months earlier. He chose option 3, almost without hesitation. The secret was out. The dam of press silence broke, and Britain was flooded with the news. The king wanted to marry a twice-divorced commoner. The nation was thrown into turmoil. Some supported him, crying, "Let the king have his woman." Others saw it as a dereliction of the most sacred duty. On December 10, 1936, in front of his three brothers, he signed the instrument of abdication. His reign had lasted 325 days. The following evening, he addressed the nation and the world by radio, no longer as king but as Prince Edward. His words are now immortal. "I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king as I would wish to do, without the help and support of the woman I love." It was a masterful performance, a pitch-perfect appeal to the heart. It cemented his image as the ultimate romantic, a man who chose love over power. He sailed from England that night into exile, leaving his terrified, stammering younger brother to pick up the crown he had so casually discarded and to face the looming storm of a world war. Edward and Wallis, now the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, lived a life of glamorous, aimless celebrity. But the fairy tale had a dark side. Their infamous visit with Adolf Hitler in 1937 cast a long, ugly shadow, and he would spend the rest of his life in a gilded cage, forever the former king, writing letters to his family in London, complaining about his allowance and his wife's status. So we are left with the great unanswered question. Was Edward VIII a romantic hero, a man who sacrificed an empire for love? Or was he the most cunning of them all? A reluctant king who, seeing a life of suffocating duty stretching before him, engineered the perfect crisis? Did he use the woman he loved as a golden key to unlock his own prison? Perhaps the prophecy of his father was wrong. He didn't ruin himself in 12 months. He liberated himself. A throne is not something you simply walk away from. Unless, of course, you've been secretly planning your route to the exit all along. The greatest love story of the century might just have been its greatest illusion.